I will call to order the Select Board meeting on September 26, 2023. It is 6:01 p.m. This meeting is being held in person and/or remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. Is anyone else recording? Is the audio okay? I feel like there's a weird feedback.
It was just a laptop.
Okay. For the record, participating this evening are myself, Liz Klein Chair, Joseph Fisher, and William Ramsey. If you're willing and able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. I believe we have 2 sets of minutes. Are we ready to proceed?
I sent in some comments. I just want to make sure that they were circulated. Were they? Oh, okay, great. Then I'm ready to proceed.
I make a motion to approve the minutes dated September 12, 2023.
Second.
Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Passes unanimously.
And I move to approve the minutes dated September 19th, 2023.
Second.
Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Passes unanimously. Next is recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. Do you want to split up the proclamation? I'll start. And Joe, if you want to do the next
Make
paragraph,
sure I don't see it in my packet.
you can pass it over to me.
Okay, if you could, that'd be great. Thank you.
Town of Hingham, Massachusetts, Indigenous Peoples Day. As President Biden proclaimed on Indigenous Peoples Day in October of last year, since time immemorial, American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians have built vibrant and diverse cultures, safeguarding land, language, spirit, knowledge, and tradition across the generations. On Indigenous Peoples Day, our nation celebrates the invaluable contributions and resilience of Indigenous peoples, recognizes their inherent sovereignty, and commits to honoring the federal government's trust and treaty obligations to tribal nations.
Our country was conceived on a promise of equality and opportunity for all people, a promise that, despite the extraordinary progress we have made through the years, we have never fully lived up to. That is especially true when it comes to upholding the rights and dignity of the indigenous people who were here long before colonization of the Americas began. For generations, federal policies systematically sought to assimilate and displace Native people and eradicate Native cultures. Today, we recognize indigenous peoples' resilience and strength, as well as the immeasurable positive impact that they have made on every aspect of American society.
The contributions that Indigenous peoples have made throughout history in public service, entrepreneurship, scholarship, the arts, and countless other fields are integral to our nation, our culture, and our society. Indigenous peoples have served and continue to serve in the United States Armed Forces with distinction and honor at one of the highest rates of any group, defending our security every day. Today, we acknowledge the significant sacrifices made by Native peoples to this country and recognize their many ongoing contributions to our nation. On Indigenous Peoples Day, we honor America's first inhabitants and the tribal nations that continue to thrive today. We encourage everyone to celebrate and recognize the many indigenous communities and cultures that make up our great country. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board of the Town of Hingham, do hereby proclaim October 9th, 2023 as Indigenous Peoples Day. We call upon the people of Hingham to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Voted this 26th day of September 2023, signed Elizabeth F. Klein, Chair, Joseph M. Fisher, and William C. Ramsey.
I move to proclaim October 9th, 2023 as Indigenous Peoples' Day in the town of Hingham.
Second.
Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, to consider approval of the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Galley Kitchen and Bar for the Mad Love Music Festival to be held at the South Shore Conservatory on October 8th, 2023, from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Do we have Brian Donovan with us?
Sharon let me know that he's logging in now, so
Okay.
I don't know if you want to come back to it.
Okay. All right, we will come back. Next item on the agenda is to consider approval of the agreement with M.E. O'Brien and Sons Incorporated for play equipment, site furnishings, and edging equipment for the Cronin Field Playground. We have Mark Thurell with us and Kathy Riley. Welcome, thank you.
Good evening. So yes, we're aiming to fully renovate the Hingham Community Playground. It was built 24 years ago, served the public for a long time, a couple generations of families going through this playground. So yeah, our goal is to fully renovate it, and this would be the first step towards that process.
Excellent. So where is the funding coming from?
The funding would come from private fundraising, our recreation revolving fund, and the roadway SCIF fund.
Okay. So you have the funds secured already?
Yes.
Got it, okay. Joe, do you have any questions about the contract?
I did. You said this is the first step, suggesting there's more than one step. What are the steps?
So our goal is to have the installation next fall, a year from now. So the second step just being the installation process and working with Kathy Riley and doing procurement for the installation of the equipment, the poured-in-place rubber surfacing, the excavation. That would be kind of the big second step.
So this first step you have in the contract and being completed by May 31st. Does that work in terms of your schedule and also weather, in terms of what needs to be done?
It's just delivering the pieces, right?
Yeah, so it would just be delivering the equipment by then. And then the installation would be a few months after that in the fall, after our summer camps are over.
So so you're going to be storing things?
Potentially, we have to figure that out with the playground company that's selling the equipment. Potentially, an installer could store the equipment until it's installed. So yes, we'd be looking at that.
And is that storage cost included in what you're?
That cost is not included in there. I do know that some installers will store the equipment for no cost
Right.
at all.
Okay. I just would hate to have areas unavailable because it's now housing stuff that's going to be used later on in the fall.
Yes, yeah. We're going to work on that and figure that
Okay.
the timing of when
Got
the
it.
equipment gets delivered and the installation, yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. No other
Yeah.
questions?
Bill, questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kathy. It's my understanding that you are going to try to save the plaque that comes in as you come into the playground that's on the stone, correct?
Yes, yep.
Excellent, great.
Our plan is to save both the stone and the plaque. Not sure if it's going to be in the exact location depending on the installation of the equipment, but yeah, our plan is to save the plaque and the stone.
That's great, and it's appreciated. So when that playground was put in, probably in 98, 99, right around there, I was actually on the rec commission, and I remember the effort that it took to put that playground in. It was, the two women who led the effort were Sarah Boynton and Jill Sedian. And they put so much time, energy, effort into that playground. They ended up becoming Citizens of the Year that year in the Hingham Journal. And it was an effort that was just, all the fundraising was done privately by this group. I remember when we put the equipment in, it was done by just residents. Like, we didn't have any heavy machinery assisting us. We went out there with shovels on a Saturday morning, and it was a tremendous effort. During the process, you know, Mark, you may growing up on Thompson, you may remember this, there was a lot of objection to it. You know, a lot of abutters were concerned about this playground. And, you know, the people involved with the effort, we really couldn't understand why, but obviously abutters to any project have a right to speak up and voice their concerns. But it was such a tremendous community effort. And I know when it was built, those of us that were involved with it just felt tremendous pride, you know, that we did this. And we did, again, everything was raised by the group, the equipment was put in by the group, the whole effort was. So I appreciate you saving that plaque, because I do think it's important for the original folks involved with it to have, you know, that stone and that plaque there, even though the playground itself is going to change. And I do think a change is needed. I mean, the equipment is not ADA accessible. It's just kind of fallen apart over the years. I mean, since
Yeah.
'98, it's just been kind of beat up. The fence is kind of wrong. So I think it's a great initiative by the Rec Commission, and I appreciate your efforts to save that plaque. I think it's important, so thank you for that.
Oh, we definitely do too. They did a phenomenal job. All over the South Shore, people come to that playground. So, yeah, we want to preserve the founders of that playground, that plaque and the rock, absolutely.
Thank you. Nothing else?
And following on to that, I did see a comment about saving the bricks as well. I don't know if that's part of your plan, if that can be done.
So there, yes, there are a bunch of bricks. It's not part of the design plan within the
Okay.
playground. The safety standards have changed dramatically from 24 years ago, where the entire surfacing is going to be poured-in-place rubber. And so it really comes down to safety, not having the bricks within the design of the playground.
Sure.
They're also, I believe, set in cement. So we're going to figure out the right way to handle the bricks. We're not sure at some point if we're able to return the bricks to the residents or if we can come up with another solution, but we're going to be looking at that as well.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Other questions? Okay, any questions or comments?
Liz, do you mind if I make a comment?
Oh, sure, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Oh, I can't hear you. Okay, thank you. Mark, as you're collecting donations for this, I assume they'll be put into a gift account? Is that the intent?
That's correct, yes.
Can you please work with John Coughlin? There needs to be an accompanying memo identifying the purpose of the gift account, of the gift for expenditure purposes. Just make sure we're trying to dot our I's and cross our T's, and we're trying to do that whenever we collect money for gift accounts. Just work with John that we can get a blanket statement for any gifts that come in for this purpose.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions or comments from members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I'm ready to take a motion.
I make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement with M.E. O'Brien and Sons Incorporated for play equipment, site furnishings, and edging equipment for the Cronin Field Playground in an amount not to exceed $561,476.50.
Second.
Roll call vote, Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right,
thank you,
thank you.
Kathy,
Nice.
thank you so much, Mark, thank you, Vicky. It's exciting. See that moving forward, thank you. All right, I think that's Brian Donovan here. So I will go back to agenda item to yes, no?
Yes, no, that's
Okay.
fine.
To consider approval of the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Galley Kitchen and Bar for the Mad Love Music Festival to be held at the South Shore Conservatory on October 8, 2023, from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Brian Donovan,
Yes.
welcome. Can you explain the event a little bit?
So the event, this will be our event that we've done at the South Shore Conservatory. They have between 3 and 4 bands, a couple of food vendors, and we also do beer and wine each year. We have 1, 2, 3 satellite bars, plus our food truck, and a couple other food vendors there. And the event has been going on, like I said, for 10 times, 11 years. And it raises money for the South Shore Conservatory for the Jodka Foundation.
Excellent. Yes, I know it's a wonderful community event, and it's been very successful in the past, so excited to see that happening again. Is it the same setup, do you know, and about the same number of attendees expected?
Yes.
Okay, and I see that a detail was requested, so I'm assuming that's happening.
I did see that, and I passed that on to the coordinators of the event for that. And typically, they do have a detail. I'm not sure why they haven't reached out yet, but I did pass that information along.
Okay, thank you. Joe, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, one question, just in terms of the attendance, you're estimating about 700 folks with parking at Carson Field, is that right?
Bear Cove Park, I believe, and they shuttle people up from there.
So it says parking is at Carson Field off of Bear Cove Park Drive.
Okay.
Right, and
Sorry.
I just want to make sure we got that right. And is there any concern about field maintenance, and are we doing anything that's going to be damaging the field as cars are parked there?
I'm sorry. Was that question for me? I apologize.
It is. I just don't, I want to make sure we're not doing anything that ultimately is going to be a detriment to the town in terms of parking on the field.
I think they're parking at Carlson in the large parking lot adjacent to
They're
it.
not on the field, but they're in the parking lot.
Right.
Okay,
Exactly.
okay, that's, because some events, you have cars on the field and that can be.
Yeah, right.
But that's not that. Okay, great. Then you've addressed my problem, my question. Thank you, Tom. Nothing else.
Bill, any questions or comments?
Yes, how many people do you anticipate at the event again?
700?
And so it's, I mean, that's a lot of cars. That lot, I don't think that lot can accommodate 700 cars.
Well, cut it in half probably.
Yeah, I mean, and the other concern is, though, October 8th, I just looked at my phone, is a Sunday. And I mean, I'm happy it's on a Saturday, because Saturday it's soccer from, probably 8 or 9 a.m. until like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. But I think that field is used pretty widely on Sunday as well. Do we know about that? I wish Mark was still here. I mean, weekend in the fall on those ball fields are very. Yeah, I mean, weekends in the fall on those fields is a lot of traffic going in and out.
So Sergeant Kilroy is on the line. Maybe he can help you.
Well, I wish Mark was still here. He left, but Mark would know exactly. I think on Sundays is probably field hockey. And I know this because my daughter plays in lacrosse and some other sports. I mean, was that vetted? Was this vetted with the rec department about what cars are already going to be there on Sunday? I mean, I go there every Saturday. It is that on Saturdays that lot and that area cannot accommodate more cars. So I don't know what the usage is on Sunday or the intensity use on Sunday, but I think it's worth the question to find out.
Yeah, Tom, can we have Sharon follow up with South Shore Conservatory? But Brian is a vendor. He's not the event organizer here.
Liz, if you want to put a pin in this discussion, I can call Mark right now and have him come right back upstairs.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Okay. All right, let's do that.
All right. Okay.
Sorry, Brian, I know these are questions you probably can't answer, but
But I think.
we'll get there.
Yeah, but I think in terms of the vendor responsibilities here, I think we've vetted those questions, and I'm satisfied as long as we can get this other issue handled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, in terms of the license, I have no concerns. And this event has happened the same weekend for many years, so
Okay.
I'm assuming they figured it out, but it's worth checking. Okay. Do you mind just holding on, Brian, and we'll come back to this?
Yes, sure. I am, yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is to consider approval of the agreement with CN Wood Enviro LLC for a 2024 trackless MT7 tractor for the Public Works Department. Hello, welcome.
How are you?
All right, do you want to explain, Matt, what?
So this is one of
here?
our heavy equipment that we use for roadside and sidewalk cleaning. We were able to procure a grant with the help of the town engineer for part of the purchase of this. And we have two other of these machines that are currently running. We use these with a combination of Bombardis to address the sidewalk plowing in the winter during the storms and stuff like that.
Okay.
So we have a couple of them. We've been very happy with them. So this is just continuation of building the fleet.
Okay, excellent. So I see 50% is from the grant, and then the balance, the other 50% has already been budgeted
Yeah,
FY24 capital?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and we expect to have it by the end of this year?
Yes, we met with the vendor.
Oh, sorry, next year,
But no,
December.
we met with the vendor recently at a local equipment show, and we were told it should be here before snow flies this November.
Oh, good.
Okay, great.
So we're
Great.
very excited.
So we have El Nino coming.
Yeah.
We might have a lot of snow
Don't
this
say
year.
that. No, it's a bad four-letter word.
Bad for our budget.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, thank you for bringing this in front of us. Joe, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, is this replacing any equipment? Are you retiring a piece and this is going to come in its place?
No, this is actually just building our fleet off of
Okay.
this. We've had such good performance with the other ones and the versatility the machine brings because it can be used both during the summer and the winter.
Yep.
We use it for roadside mowing, field mowing, some of the bigger stuff. So it's a very versatile piece of equipment. So it just helps us
Okay.
more.
And do you know the life expectancy? How long, what's the useful life?
I think right now our oldest one is 12 years old
Yep.
currently, and it still runs very well.
Okay.
Minimal issues.
Yeah, I mean, because looking, sort of amortizing the price over 10, 15 years, this looks very reasonable. Okay, great. No other questions?
Excellent. Bill?
As I said last week, it's great to see us finally being able to fill some of these DPW capital needs. You know, it's been so many years we've had to defer all of this, all these capital costs. So it's great to see us finally doing it.
Excellent. Any questions or comments from members of the public? Okay,
I move to authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement with CN Wood Enviro LLC for a 2024 trackless MT7 tractor for the Public Works Department in an amount not to exceed $178,285.
Second.
roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. It passes unanimously.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you,
You
Matt.
too. Thanks, Matt. All right. Tom, do you have an answer? No?
I am texting and calling. I just tried, Mark didn't answer his phone. I tried Vicky, she got cut off. So I'm expecting a call back. Let's go one more item.
Okay. Would you feel comfortable voting for the license?
We
Or
might
do you
as well
wanna
hold
wait?
off for just a little bit.
Okay. Okay. All right, next is to consider approval of the agreement with Roddy McRoddy Design Collaborative LLC for facility upgrades to the roof, HVAC, and facade at the South Shore Country Club. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me. We have, this contract was procured through the RFQ process where we had a design or evaluation team of J.F. Fry, myself, and Chris Riley, who was the golf professional at South Shore Country Club. We have this, the funding is in the FY24 budget. We are using money from our savings. So the two projects that we wish to do with this design contract are the roof on the bowling alley and the locker rooms, as well as the function space. Those two roofs need to be done, so that's going to be designed out by this team. And then the second one is the HVAC work in the locker room and lobby area of the bowling alley building. So that's going to be the main two focuses of this design team's projects. So it's came to a total of $56,130. And we feel that this team would be the best team to move forward. We've worked in the past with this team with the maintenance building and the pool design, but also the facility assessment of the building. So they're have intimate knowledge of the building and the needs of the building. And when we did do the facility assessment, these two particular projects were at the top of the list. The HVAC does not work currently in the locker room, so the heat does, but the AC does not. So it can get very hot in there in the summertime.
Okay. And when would this work start?
They would start immediately doing the design work, making sure that everything is up to code, and then we'll be doing bid documents and then probably put it out to bid, I would imagine, probably in January, February.
Okay, great. So this contract goes through
September 30th of 2024.
24,
Correct.
but you obviously expect it to be done
Yeah,
much sooner.
right. Obviously, with the roof, sometimes in the wintertime, it makes it a little more difficult to do the roofing in the winter months.
Mhm.
So I probably would expect that might be done sometime in the spring,
Okay.
depending on how mild the winter is. But I would expect the HVAC work to get done over the wintertime.
Okay. So in time for next golf season.
Exactly. Everyone will be
Next summer.
happy. It's been-
Okay, good. Joe?
I know you haven't put this out to bid, but what is your expected cost for the project?
It was approximately $230,000 for the roof was the expected project cost from the facility assessment, and then $170,000 for the HVAC. We're hoping to be able to save some money on the design of the HVAC to bring that down, and we anticipate that the roof probably would be a little bit higher than that facility assessment estimate.
Yep. No, I mean, no other questions. Clearly, we need the architect and design services to make sure the project's done right. So, no other questions.
Bill?
I have no questions. I know the work is needed, so good luck with it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions or comments from members of the public? Okay. Ready to take a motion?
Sure. I'll move to authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement with Roddy McRoddy Design Collaborative LLC for facility upgrades to the roof, HVAC, and facade at the South Shore Country Club in an amount not to exceed $56,130.
Second.
Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you mind just letting
No, that's fine.
Mark come up? Can he have your chair? Thank you. Thank you for coming back up.
No problem.
We had some questions about the fields, Carson Fields, on Sunday, October 8th, what the usage is like, because the parking for the South Shore Conservatory event, Mad Love, is expecting to use the parking there.
The traffic on Sundays in the fall is really light. It's not like the springtime. There's we have a couple of programs running, but the traffic is extremely light. There might be one or two programs running, about a dozen kids, 15, but it's not like the springtime where the softball field, the Little League field, and the other rectangular fields are all running. So it can handle and support the Mad Love Music Festival.
Okay.
Great. So it's not like Saturdays over at Carlson.
No,
Yeah,
Saturdays
Saturday's
could be a
pretty
different
busy,
story,
yeah.
but Sundays, the traffic's light.
Great.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, were you notified of this? Just wondering about the process.
We were.
Were you in the loop? Okay.
We
great.
were, yes. Yep.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you for confirming.
Oh, no problem.
All right.
Okay, any other
I think-
questions or concerns about Mad Love?
All right, with that, I'd make a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverage license to Galley Kitchen and Bar for the Mad Love Music Festival to be held at the South Shore Country Club on October 8th, 2023, from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m.
So that would be the South Shore Conservatory?
at the South Shore Conservatory.
Yep.
Yep.
Second.
Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. It passes unanimously. Thank you for your patience, Brian. Best of luck. Okay.
He's muted.
We can't hear you, but
Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is to consider, thank you, Brian, to consider approval of the agreement with Country Club Enterprises LLC for the lease of 64 club car golf carts for the South Shore Country Club.
So the country club is in definite need of new carts. The current carts that we had were purchased 7 years ago. So this is the 7th season that we've had these carts, which the general life expectancy of a golf cart is 5 years. So as we look at, the out years, the reason why we're not purchasing like we've done in the past and we went to a lease option was due to the fact that we're hoping to get to electric carts as we move forward with all the different, planning items that we're doing at the country club. So for instance, the old cart barn now is currently going to be used as the golf cart barn, as it used to host all the equipment now that the new maintenance building is built. So as we kind of move everything around, we need to get that barn electrified, and then we also, so we wanted to give us some time to be in a good place to be able to move forward with electric carts in 3 years. So that's why we're kind of using this contract as a bridge of 3 years to lease option to get to where we want to be and have electric carts in 3 years. The golf cart revenue is about $220,000 a year, so the golf course can definitely handle this contract as far as the expenses of the contract.
Excellent. So obviously this all comes from the golf cart revenue or the enterprise fund.
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you for looking forward to the electric carts. It's certainly the direction we want to go in. Is there an issue with the availability or no, because it's a lease?
We've been in discussions. So they have told us that they were able to get the carts in by next April 1st.
Okay.
So that's when the contract will be, essentially will be in place. The delivery will be next April. So we'll have it for the next season, 64 new carts. We're going to plan on keeping about 16 of our current fleet because I don't really, what those extra 16 carts are for more like tournaments. When you have larger tournaments, they don't really get a lot of use. So what we're trying to do is to make sure we'll take the 16 best ones that we can find. Hopefully we can find 16 good ones, and we will utilize those for a few years as our tournament carts, and then the other 64 will be the main fleet that the people day to day will be using out on the course.
Okay, excellent. And you have the Bill Friends tournament coming up, right?
The Bill Friend, and there's some spots available. So the Bill Friend tournament is on Monday. All the proceeds go to the golf course and the Friends of South Shore Country Club.
Excellent,
Great.
excellent. Joe, questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm just not clear on what's being leased. Are electric carts being leased or?
No, so it's 64 gas carts will be leased for a term of 3 years. And so what we're trying to do is we didn't purchase them because we don't want to wait that long to get to electric carts. So we're leasing them as a bridge to get to electric carts after this contract is over. We feel that we can build out the infrastructure of what we need to be ready for the golf carts and electric carts in 3 years, but it's going to take some time, for us to electrify the current building that's there, and also we're going to have to do some type of addition to have additional carts as well.
So, I'm not clear. So are electric carts available to be leased, but we've elected not to do that?
So currently we do not have the infrastructure to be able to support the operational needs of an electric car.
In other words, to charge them?
To charge them, one, and also we don't have a big enough barn to put them in currently as far as to be able to place them because they have to be put in overnight. Currently, we keep most of our carts are outdoors.
Okay.
So we have a barn that fits about 40 in them. We need to kind of extend that to make sure that we have probably about 65 to 70 carts. So it's a twofold issue. And right now that the barn is not electrified, so we're not capable of hosting electric carts at this time.
So HMLP has a charging station there, don't they?
Yes, we have 2 charging stations at the country club.
But that would not be sufficient for electric carts?
No. So generally speaking, how it works would be that you would have the barn would be set up, they would pull them in, and then they would have, the plugs would come down from the ceiling, and then you would
Okay.
plug them in overnight. The lithium ones are actually, pretty good. They can charge in like 3 hours. So that's what we're probably looking to purchase when we do get to that point.
Do we have the option to, in advance of the 3 years, move to electric?
Yes, so this contract is off-state contract, and all the golf, it's not, it's off Sourcewell, I'm sorry, which is a national contract. But the state contract does have golf carts on there, and all the major vendors have that, so we would be able to go to electric carts off a state contract. And I think the availability, hopefully, it's the supply chain and all that is getting a little bit better.
Sure.
So we're, I hope in 3 years that we'd be able to, get off the shelf almost, or, within 6 months, be able to order them and have them in place.
So if they are available, let's say in 2 years, are we able under this contract to end it so that we can begin the electric golf carts sooner than the 3-year term?
I have not looked into that, to be honest with you. I'm sure that if, the company would always entertain, like if you bought out the contract, or if you went into electric and you upgraded to electric, I'm sure those discussions could happen.
Yeah, but there's no provision here.
There's
for
no
us to-
provision
got it.
for that to happen.
Okay, no other questions?
Bill, any questions or comments?
My only comment is it's great to hear that we're moving toward electric golf carts in the future. So, good work, Kevin.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? Okay, or do you feel comfortable moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the reality of having a facility in place to make sure that what we get, we can service, and that the carts are actually usable by the golfers who need to use them.
Right.
I get that. But I think the town is moving towards electrification at a fairly rapid pace, and I know HMLP has placed this high on their agenda. So to the extent that you need assistance in electrifying an area, I suspect they'd be willing to step up. I mean, to the extent that we are able to do that, I hope we can move forward with talking to this vendor about changing what we have to electric carts. So with that, I'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement with Country Club Enterprises LLC for the lease of 64 club car golf carts for the South Shore Country Club in an amount not to exceed $176,652.
Second.
Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Kevin. Thank you, Kathy. Next on the agenda, downtown Hingham traffic calming measures update. I know we have Sergeant Jeff Kilroy and J.R. Fry with us. Hi, J.R.
Good evening. So I just shared the PowerPoint. I hope you all can see it. This plan is one that I think you're quite familiar with now. This was the original plan presented. And so tonight, we're going to talk about two things. One is some additional streets for approval of 25-mile-per-hour speed limit under Section 17C. And the other one is the traffic committee made a recommendation of 4 locations where speed feedback signs are currently installed, and a recommendation of 2 alternate locations at the 2 locations as requested, where we wanted to have a little more scrutiny on how we handled those. So if we can begin with the speed feedback signs, the first sign that was recommended, the speed feedback sign is on North Street. It's on a utility pole located at or near 190 North Street. At this location, we did not receive any negative commentary. We did receive positive commentary. A neighbor expressed sincere devotion to the existence of this sign. So that one is uncontroversial. The next recommended location is on South Street. It's actually a little bit further up from what is shown on this plan. It's located at or near the property of 142 South Street. That location also was uncontroversial and received no negative comments. So,
Can I just interrupt for a second, JR? So that one, maybe I'm not remembering, the 142 South Street, where is that being moved from?
that is in place there, and there is no current intention of moving it.
Okay, sorry, got it.
So this is the first sign that has received some additional public comment regarding its location. And so we, Sergeant Kilroy and I, along with Chief Jones, went out and reviewed locations. While we do believe that the location that it is in meets all the requirements that we would look for in serving the public interest for a public safety purpose, we did identify an alternate location. And I've got this picture here on the side of the screen, but I'm going to actually share the full picture quickly because it will more clearly show, there we go, the exactly what we're proposing to do. In the background, you can see the existing location. So it's just beyond the driveway. In the foreground, we've got a taller street tree, and then just in between, there is an existing light pole. The alternate location would relocate the speed feedback sign to the existing light pole in the foreground. It would be a little closer to the top. We would work with the installer to hardwire the speed feedback sign into the existing streetlight circuit so that it would so that we would not need to utilize the solar panel at that location. And then as you can probably imagine, because we can see that the tree is in leaf right now, we would need to trim back quite a few of the lower branches in order to make sure that the drivers would have clear visibility of the sign as they approached it. I did consult with the tree warden, and I have tentative approval to get that tree trimming done should that be determined to be necessary. So that is the 25/21 North Street location with the where the abutter's address or approximate location where it is currently installed and where it would be moved to, coming about 30 feet closer to 3A, just moving it to the other side of the driveway, really. Are there any questions about this one?
I don't have any questions about that one.
I just
Go
okay to
ahead.
ask questions
Yeah,
now? No, wait.
absolutely.
Yeah, so on that location, JR, again, you indicated that it's really only about maybe a driveway's length down from the current one, correct?
Correct.
All right, and also the tree warden has indicated no problem with trimming the tree for visibility of the sign, correct?
He did indicate that to me, yes.
And it's also my understanding that HMLP has also said that they have no issues with hardwiring into the electricity source. Is that correct?
That's correct. Or hanging the sign on that pole.
Okay, and also the abutters on that location are have no issues with the sign being placed there. Is that accurate?
They had no. We spoke with them prior to our final determination, and they indicated no preference one way or the other.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on. This is the location located at 90 Main Street, which is the old ship meeting house. So, and I think I'm also going to flip over and we can look at a different view of that. So this is the Google Earth view, but you can see the space where it is currently located just beyond the old ship driveway. Now, the location was somewhat important in our choosing this location for a couple of reasons. One, it's at the crest of Main Street as it rises coming up out of downtown. So there's a vertical curve right there where the slope of the road changes. And by catching it right at the crest there, we maximize the visibility to see things up the street, right up there. So that was the reason that we, one of the reasons that we located it there. Also, as you can see, there are several contiguous driveways there. So we had about 70 feet of clear space where there is no street parking that's allowed. That is another assist in making sure that the speed feedback sign is effective in displaying the speed of the approaching vehicles and having them observe it. So those were some of the reasons that we chose that space. It is right at the top of the rest of the street where you've got all of the parallel parking begins on the east side of the street. That's utilized by people who are walking across the street to enter this commercial district. So when all of these, when it does get busy down here and these parking spots get full, and if people are walking across the street, that's exactly the issue that we are the public safety issue that we're trying to address with getting drivers to slow down. And one of the things that we've noticed is that they are most responsive, or you see the biggest effect right when they get to the sign. In other words, they finally notice it, they slow down, and then they get that green light right when they get to the sign. But the further away that they drive from that, so as they drive further down into downtown, and unfortunately I was witness to it yesterday, you will see people actually speed right back up. So the further that you move it away from the target area, that can mitigate a little bit of the effectiveness that we're working towards. Now, we did find a close spot, a close alternate spot, as you can see here. Currently, there's a crosswalk here. We did have a good discussion with the town planning director that it's possible that we may reevaluate the necessity of this crosswalk now that the parish house is not there. But we will, our current alternative location for the for this speed feedback sign would be to place it here. This is in front of 106 Main Street, and to effect this change, we would paint out the parking here beyond the crosswalk so that we would maintain the clear space that we need for the sign to work fully effectively. So those are that is the location and the alternate for the existing location and the proposed alternate for the speed feedback sign at the old ship church. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay. Well, thank you, JR and Sergeant Kilroy for working on this and working with the traffic committee as well. Just a brief recap, we had asked for at least 2 alternate locations based on abutter feedback that still met the objective from a public safety perspective. So thank you for doing that work. Do you have any questions, Bill, on the existing and then the 2 alternate locations?
Just overall comments. Yeah. So obviously we've had a lot of public comment on this issue. Wouldn't say that it's been unanimous, but the written feedback that we've gotten, the comments at last week's meeting were very strongly supportive of speed signs in the downtown corridor in some capacity. You know, my feeling is what I would recommend as part of any potential vote, either now or next week or whenever we make the vote, is that we do have a look back provision placed into the vote that would not make these signs permanent. They would make them in existence for a look back period. During that period, we would continue to assess their effectiveness. We would continue to get feedback on the look. I personally would like to continue the discussion with Andrea Young and evaluate the style and substance of the signs and try to make them look a little more historically accurate. I think that's Andrea's offered us some alternatives. I think we should continue to pursue that as we evaluate the look back of these signs. But I wanted to also note that, you know, JR, your study that you presented last week, I know it was only a brief study, and the opinion of Sergeant Kilroy, who's been a police officer 20 years, he's been the traffic sergeant for 6, and he had personal observations of all of these signs, indicates that they have worked. And at this point, people are slowing down. So I think that's important to know. But again, I think we should continue to look at the style and substance of the signs and get more information and more data as we continue the dialogue on where they should be and how they should look.
Great, agreed. And I know, JR, you were working with Andrea Young on some alternatives in terms of aesthetics. And we had talked about capturing and evaluating the speed data in the signs on, you know, a quarterly or 6-month basis. I think the look back period makes sense as well. This may be an interim solution. I think we don't have enough information yet. JR, can you talk a little about what happened today at the traffic committee meeting and the feedback from the committee?
I think generally the committee supports the utilization of these signs. The committee believes that the existing locations are effective and accomplish the goals for public safety. The committee also supports the alternative locations as being effective for the goals of public safety should the select board choose to relocate those particular signs.
Okay, thank you. I believe we have some members of the public that may want to comment. I'll look first to the people in the room and then to the people on Zoom. Any questions or comments? Sure, if you don't mind coming up to the podium.
Tom Wilson, 88 Summer Street, and member of Bullshit Church and building chair and whatnot. I do like the idea of looking at the sign style and whatnot. I think that's a good approach. I didn't see any thought or whatnot into any other suggestions that were made last week. For example, stop signs at Water Street or Elm Street or some other solution to slowing the traffic down. I'm not disputing the fact that the flashing signs do have an effect, but was there a re-look at whether or not other alternatives might do the same thing or very close to it? So it gets back to the issue in my mind of having both views, this issue of safety, which no one's disputing, I mean, the importance of safety, but also the aesthetics of where that sign is located. I mean, it's not an attractive sign. It's in the worst location it could be for the main view of Old Ship. If you look at any book or whatever, you see the view up that driveway into the view of the building. And I ask myself as we think about Old Ship and the fact that it's such an important town symbol and seal, and the fact that the town has supported the maintenance of that building for all these years. This hasn't been a First Parish project. It's been a whole town project. Actually, there were just a little bit of history. There's 240 meeting houses built in the 17th century in New England, and Old Ship is the last one standing. Every other meeting house has been torn down or burned down or fell down from disuse or whatever. But Old Ship, somehow, the people in Hingham decided for decade after decade after decade to keep this building going, and they didn't just keep it going. It's still a pure building. It's got all the original architect. It's got all the beautiful beams. The plaster's original. The pews, most of them, and the pulpit. The building is pristine. It still is. It's in great shape. We had a major restoration project about 12 years ago that we spent well over $1 million, and a lot of that money came from townspeople, not just the church or some grants that we got. The townspeople contributed heavily, and it's a National Historic Landmark. That landmark process began in 1962, and Old Ship was in the first wave of making it a landmark designated building of all the buildings in the country.
Take my job.
What's that?
I think that was a mistake.
Okay, all right. I thought they were marveling at what a great
great orator you are, yes.
So in any case, it really is a significant building supported by the town, and that sign does diminish the view and the feeling and the aesthetics of the building. And I asked myself, other major buildings in this area, would Boston put a sign like that in front of Old North Church or Paul Revere's house, or would we put it in front of Old Derby or the Benjamin Lincoln House or whatever? I mean, you do have to make exceptions to buildings that are critically important to the history of the town and to the country. It's amazing this year how many people we've had come through the church for tours. Maybe it's the pent-up demand from
the pandemic, but we've got 8 to 10 docents now that are just working literally pretty much every day of the week, bringing people through. So it brings a lot of people into town. It's just something I hope we can find a solution where we both find a safety solution and an aesthetic solution. So it's still forefront in our minds.
Excellent.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
And just to clarify, Tom, I think the recommendation is to move it away from the church. Yeah, I mean, that was JR's I think that was JR's recommendation.
well,
So it would move away, current location that you have a concern with, it would move away from.
I thought I heard something different. I guess I thought I heard that there are 2 other alternatives, but it does. But the decision hasn't been made yet as to which will be
That's
picked.
correct. Well, that's
or
correct.
we'll leave
Yeah,
it right where it is. So in my mind, the
Yes.
decision is yet to be made.
It is. We have not
So
voted on it yet.
I'm still here
Yes.
talking about
Where it is versus where it
Yeah.
Could
The
be.
alternate,
Right,
yes.
exactly.
Understood.
Yes, thank you.
And that is, in fact, what we're considering this evening.
Yeah.
And I just want to pick up on your point, which is I do want to make sure, to the extent that we have a look-back process, that we are considering alternatives. We've talked in the past about speed bumps or speed planes. We've talked about the stop signs. And so signage, while it may be effective, may not be the only effective approach. And so that is something that we're going to make sure that is not forgotten as we go through this process.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
JR, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring to the fore that there's a misconception about what is permissible for us as a municipality when it comes to the placement of certain traffic control devices. So stop signs are strictly limited in how we may place them by the manual of uniform traffic control devices. And so where intersections do not meet, or specific segments of directions of intersections do not meet the requirements for a stop sign control, then it is impermissible for me to recommend them for installation. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that stop signs are not something that we have the ability to simply place what I'll call at our convenience, as opposed to we have to demonstrate an engineering need through an engineering process. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. There other comments or questions from people in the room? Okay, anyone on Zoom that would like to make a comment or ask a question?
Steve Juranic.
I think I see Steve's hand. Steve Juranic?
Hi, I just I live where the new placement would be. I just want to point out that those trees out in front of the house reach out over the parking spaces that would need to be, I guess, cut back pretty severely in order for the sign to be seen. The other thing is that, you know, these things flash red and green all night long, and my 10-year-old daughter's bedroom will probably be the closest bedroom to anybody's to the sign of any of it. And, you know, Old Ship is saying how much the town has done to, you know, keep the structure and do all that kind of, you know, how much it's done for the town. Well, I was, you know, it seems like it's in a good spot. If Old Ship could bear it for the temporary thing, I think it would be a benefit to the town where it is, rather than having to spend all the money to relocate it because people think it's, you know, not the right aesthetic for where it stands. That's all I got.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from people on Zoom? Do you want to make a comment? Go ahead.
Carol Valentine, 4 Juniper Road. I'm also a member of Old Ship Church. I believe last week when we got these statistics of the speeds of the cars that were coming down Main Street, the one at Old Ship Church seemed to be having people driving fastest. So I'm thinking that if the sign is moved up the hill, whether it's at Water Street or somewhere else, it would start slowing people down quicker than where it is now. And another thought that I just had tonight is if you get rid of that crosswalk that's up sort of in front of the old parish house and move it down to Elm Street, it would help people crossing the street to the shops, to the movie theater, and that kind of thing. And with a sign maybe that says crosswalk, that would slow people down as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
JR, did the traffic committee look at moving the sign at the intersection of Main and Water? I believe we did talk about that.
So the issue with, relocating the sign all the way up to the intersection of Main and Water would not be effective because, for two reasons. Right at that location, vehicles are coming over a hill, so there's a vertical curvature and a horizontal curvature. And so the actual time that that the radar beacon is hitting the vehicle and providing the feedback in order to get them to slow down is very limited. So that's why we selected a piece where either where it currently is or the alternative location both have a reasonably straight shot and would have a longer feedback time where the vehicles could get feedback on how fast they're going and how fast they should be going.
Understood. Okay. I do like the idea of possibly moving the crosswalk, and there would be signage with that at Elm Street. So that's certainly something to consider. Joe, do you have?
Yeah, we discussed that at the traffic committee meeting, and I think that would be favorable, but we wanted to give it due consideration since it was just brought up and nobody really had time to think about it.
Okay. That makes sense. Would signage at that crosswalk be sufficient, do you think? Or do we also need the feedback sign?
All of these are tools, and none of them is 100% effective. If you look at, it's interesting. If you look at, there's been some call for the stop signs, but the second largest complaint that we get right after speeding is people running stop signs. And so, we want to manage driver behavior or try to impact driver behavior in ways that they will be responsive to and respectful of. Increasing driver frustration, unfortunately, simply leads to more bad driver behavior. So but would crosswalk signs assist? Yes, those can absolutely assist. A lot of it is the drivers learning that this is a different environment than what they have grown used to. And we're trying to change the environment, and we're trying to change the driver's perception of that environment.
Right, absolutely. Judy Sneath?
Hi there. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone and I can't quite figure out how to show my screen. But I have a question and a comment. So my question is,
Judy, do you mind just providing your address?
Oh, sorry, Judy Sneath, 89 North Street. And I appreciate, all that JR and the traffic committee and everybody has done about this. We really do have a problem downtown. It's a terrible shame that, flashing lights have become the solution but I see where they're effective. So I wonder if over time, once people are sort of used to them, if they will become less effective if there is no enforcement, like a regular program to ticket people who are going over the speed limit. That's the first thing. And then I would like to know what the plan is for this look back and for coming up with a more comprehensive plan, that might mean that these can go away and we can switch to speed tables or paint. I don't know what all the solutions are, but it seems like we owe it to ourselves, to generations to come, to be creative on solutions that don't involve flashing lights.
Agreed. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay. I think, Bill and I and Joe have said this, and certainly Judy reinforced it, the importance of this look back period and a comprehensive plan. I mean, we spoke last week that speeding isn't the only issue downtown. There's also crosswalk safety due to visibility, not just speed. There's also people not stopping at stop signs. There's an enforcement issue. So I do want to keep working on this and coming up with a more comprehensive, holistic plan that doesn't just involve signs, and it will likely involve many different elements. I think we are committed to doing something quickly, and these speed feedback signs were kind of the first solution, and we feel that they're working. So don't want to get rid of them, but certainly will continue to evaluate and adjust as needed. I will ask my colleagues what they're comfortable doing. I feel comfortable voting on the two current locations, the 190 North Street and the 142 South Street. And I feel comfortable with moving 25 North Street to 21 North Street. I feel like we have vetted that and gotten enough feedback, and that's not a huge change in terms of location, so I don't think it impacts the public safety. I'm less comfortable with the 90 to 106 Main Street. I'd like to look at what can happen with the crosswalk and maybe other potential locations there on Main. Joe, do you have feedback on that or a different opinion?
Well, I think one thing I've heard from residents who've voiced their views is that there's a concern about inertia, that you put it there and we're going to do a look back, but it just winds up continuing. And I think we need to make sure that we're making a commitment that if we're doing a look back, that it's going to be more than just, oh, it worked, so just leave it. It's really going to be what other options have we considered, and to make sure that we are not relying on something that it may be effective, but may not be the best solution for Hingham. Mm-hmm. And I think we've heard that from a number of residents. In terms of the location at 106 versus 90 Main Street, because I am comfortable with everything else that I've heard. I think we know what it looks like where it is, and is it worth looking at it at the other location to figure out what does that look like? Or do we just leave it for another week or so to get additional feedback, additional views before making a decision about moving or not? And I'm sort of between those two positions right now. But I'd love to hear what Bill has to say.
I'm comfortable voting on all of it and moving it off of Old Ship and down the street. If there's a problem at 106, I mean, we could always put a hood on it. I think it's going to be blocked by the tree. So, I mean, if you want to wait a little more, I don't know what another week or two of study is going to get us. But if obviously I'm going to go along with the majority.
So I guess, I mean, and this is a question for the traffic committee, will another week or two get us additional information? Are there other options that are being looked at, additional data that you want to consider. Will we have more information in a week or two than we have today? And JR, that's for you, or anyone else on the traffic committee. Sergeant Kilroy?
I don't know that we would have anything more definitive in a week or two than what we have now. Really, it warrants a longer term of study. Whether we want to leave them where they are or whether we want to relocate them to an alternative location. Either way, you want to see how behavior changes over a period of time, not just, in an initial period, it may seem more dramatic, but what we'd like to see is people recognizing that there's been a change in the environment and that more of the entry speeds are closer to 25 instead of closer to 40.
So JR, if we were to ask you this evening for options other than 90 and 106 Main Street, did the traffic committee consider other options, or would you have the ability to consider those options over the next week or two?
We could certainly try to identify other options. I'm not sure that we're going to identify any other locations that are suitable for for Main Street, rather. We're getting a little further afield than we want, and getting or pushing down into downtown, where people will be well into the downtown area before they start slowing down. So it's tight, and that's why we identified the locations that we identified.
If I could just add too, I mean, the concern, raised by Mr. Juranic is a very, very good one, and I agree with him 100%. JR, at last week's meeting, you mentioned the potential for, I guess the term is to hood the sign, which would just stop the glare of it. It would focus the sign information forward to oncoming vehicles and would be used to avoid disrupting any sort of residents in the area. Is that accurate?
I am confident that it would significantly reduce any of the impact to abutters, but it's hard to guarantee anything until you actually get it installed and see how it operates. With that said, when Sergeant Kilroy observed these in the field, he found them to be not too intrusive, at least in the environment on North Street. But that can be a personal perception as well. So I wouldn't want to discount other people's experience.
Well, just to reiterate my thought, certainly I would agree with Mr. Juranic's concern about potential flash. So if a hood is an option,
we could certainly install the hood and
well, maybe we try without it, but maybe we try that. Yeah, maybe we try without it. Work with Mr. Juranic. If his concern still exists, then maybe we do that as well. To again, not have the lights cause any disturbance to any budding residences. But ultimately, as I said earlier, I think we should look to transition to more historically aesthetic signs that would be more in keeping with the downtown goals of preserving our history and trying to, I think we can strike a balance between keeping people safe and having signs in place that still look nicer than maybe the ones that we currently have.
Yes. So JR, what do you think is a reasonable time frame to collect data to be meaningful? Is that 3 months, 6 months?
Certainly 3 months would give us enough of a time period that we'd see how people are responding.
Okay.
Andrea.
Yep. Andrea, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, thank you very much. At the traffic meeting this afternoon, I made the comment that I very much appreciate the complexity of that it takes to position these signs. There's so many factors that most of us don't know a thing about. I still maintain that the idea of safety and having a sign that fits into our environments is not mutually exclusive. And I think that we can work to find something like that. And there are some alternatives out there, as we know. I like the idea of, I think these signs that we have now are very appropriate if driving down East Street, at school crossings, getting to the library. I think that's a wonderful location for them. I think that hopefully they're very effective there. These signs, I think, I did some very cursory research into some other towns, historic towns, and namely Chatham and Concord and Brookline, which is more urban. But nowhere do we have, did I see, or in talking to people, were there signs, speed signs of the nature that we have. And it concerns me that they were just placed without any discussion at all. And so here we find ourselves in a position where we're evaluating signs that perhaps may something a little bit different may have been more appropriate, or maybe we'd come to the same conclusion. I don't know, but it just was, here we have them, and we're evaluating their effectiveness, but what about all the alternatives? So thank you for listening.
Thank you. I think that the board feels strongly that the sign should not be removed in their entirety. I would like to see us reevaluating them in 3 months with the appropriate data to understand the impact that they're having, and if we can see any trends in terms of people kind of learning new behavior and understanding that the downtown is 25 miles per hour now, and hopefully people are following the law and driving slower and being more careful. I would like to think that this is an interim solution, and that once people are made aware of the change, that they will follow suit and follow the law. I hope that's not wishful thinking, but I guess we'll see. So again, I feel comfortable voting for keeping the signs for now, if we can commit to reevaluating in 3 months.
Are you in favor of the two changes on one on North Street, one on Main?
Definitely North Street. I'm less comfortable with Main Street. If we feel that we can install that, see how it is, maybe put the hood on it, see how it is, that may be another useful kind of data point to look at in the 3 months. I'm certainly open to that. But I do want to make sure that, to your earlier point, this is not a forgotten conversation. This is a very active, iterative process that we are committed to, and I know the traffic committee is committed to.
Steve has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, I can't see you.
Steve Dranick.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I just wanted to add that at the traffic committee meeting today when they were talking about moving it to the 106 site, that they would then have to take away the street parking that is in front of that sign. And so essentially you're ending up with less parking downtown because of moving the sign. It was just an interesting point.
Yes, thank you. Then it's JR, can you confirm, would we lose 2 spots?
Excuse me?
Would we lose 2 parking spots if the sign was moved to 106 Main Street?
Between 2 and 3.
Yes, parking is also a concern in downtown, as we all know. So, was there?
I mean, how often are those spots used? Obviously, they're used on Sundays. We know that. Where you have a lot of parking because people are going to church. But I don't see those parking spots used all that often. I mean, would we really need to remove them?
Well, Bill, I think what he said is
we need to remove them, sir, so that we could have the visibility. If vehicles are parked in front of the sign, it would take away from the readings of the speed and the visibility of the sign. So we need to have kind of like a buffer.
It's a sightline issue.
Hmm. Was there additional feedback at the traffic committee meeting about the parking spots? I don't know who else was notified of that meeting.
We sent notices to
No, there wasn't significant discussion about the parking spots themselves. The resident at 112, I believe his last name is Weber, Mr. Weber, did attend. He also has young children, and his young children's bedroom windows would face the sign. So he had some concern for that as well. I could quickly share. If we come up here, you can see 112 there, and his children's windows, I believe, are in this upper story. What the actual impact is I wouldn't be able to tell you until we had moved the sign, but he raised the concern.
Okay. So I guess the question is if we're gonna hold off on moving the Main Street sign, or if we're willing to vote to move it and then revisit it in 3 months.
Right.
I'm ready to vote,
Okay.
but we'll see. I'm only one person, so it's a majority rules.
Jay, I just want to ask the question one more time so I'm clear. We are looking at 2 options on that location of Main Street, 90 and 106. Are there other options that we should be considering, or would you like an additional week or 2 to make sure that there are no other options that we should be considering?
I don't believe that I will find better as effective options on Main Street between Water and Elm, which is really where we're trying to improve our effectiveness.
Okay, you answered the question. Thank you. So I think waiting a week or 2 to push this up, we're not going to get additional information. And I guess where we're at is we know for sure the impact on Old Ship of the sign.
Mm-hmm.
We have suggestions, but we don't know for sure about the impact of the signs on the other properties. And I think we've heard of technology that may potentially reduce impact. And do we want to actually see if it works and if there's a diminution on the possible impacts, or or not act because we're concerned about those concerns. I think given the commitment of this board not to let inertia sit in, I would be comfortable moving forward with doing the move on Main Street and making sure that we do have that look back on a much shorter period, not an extended 6 months. I think that 90 days, 3 months is appropriate. We'll then have to make a decision. But I think we do know the negative impact on the church right now and on Hingham.
Yes, I'm certainly sensitive to the concerns of Mr. Drenick and Mr. Weber. So that gives me pause. But I think if we do make the move and then are committed to reevaluating in 3 months, and during that period, I don't want to just look at the speed data. I also want to look at if there are other solutions. Right. If there's a less intrusive solution that can go in that spot, that seems to be kind of the biggest, the spot with the most concern at this point.
And I do take to heart the comments we heard from Andrea, which is that other towns do not use these. That's not to say that these lights are not effective, but that they have found alternative means that are also effective. And I want to make sure, given the historical nature of Hingham, that we also go that route.
Yes.
So I would want to make sure that we follow up on that commitment. So I am also prepared to vote now.
Okay. All right. I'm ready to take a motion.
I'll do the first one. I'd make a motion to accept the recommendation of the traffic committee and establish a speed limit of 25 miles per hour in the following areas of Hingham as described below. I'm sorry.
I think we should, I don't think JR presented that yet, did he?
I think he did.
He presented, we didn't have really any comments on it.
Oh, okay. Okay. With Kilby Street? We definitely didn't talk about Kilby Street.
So right. So again, JR, did you cover both of those locations, the Main Street as well as the Kilby Street for the 25 miles an hour?
So this first part is extending the 25 mile per hour zone, right? So longer on Main Street and then Kilby Street from Rockland Street highway layout to the MBTA right of way.
You're right. I don't think we heard about that.
I apologize. I didn't discuss the extension of the 25-mile-an-hour zone, but I can do that now quickly. And that would be, I just brought up on the screen.
JR, could you just hold on for a second?
I just brought up on the screen.
JR.
Plan of Main Street.
JR.
To extend the 25-mile-an-hour zone.
JR.
From 90 Main Street.
JR, can you hear us?
Can you hear us? If you can hold off a second.
Technology at its best.
Right. So,
Go ahead.
I mean, because we just had an extended discussion on the second, so while it is fresh in our minds, I'm thinking we address that and then we can go back to the first one. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean,
that's
yeah,
what
I think we should do it as two separate parts. Right?
Yeah, and so.
I thought he discussed extending the 25 mile an hour zone from Main Street.
He did, but not the Kilby Street part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so dealing with the first one, so the look back period, which is discussed in the motion, is a year. And I think given our concern, we want to do something that's a little shorter.
So look backs are very common. When I was on the planning board, we typically would have a year. Obviously, understanding the concerns expressed here tonight, I mean, we could go to 6 months. I don't know if 90 days is sufficient enough time to gather this information that we would like to use in assessing the effectiveness and the aesthetics of the sign, but we could try 90 days if that's what you'd like. Planning board, we never had anything less than 6 months but obviously it's a different
Yes.
discussion.
I'm fine if the look back, what we're calling the look back period is a year, or this is prior to 1 year, but I do want us to, as a board, to revisit this and it be on the agenda in 90 days.
But what I'm concerned is if we don't have any additional information, what good is it putting it back on the agenda? How do we assess whether or not this decision needs to be revised?
Well, we can still collect the speed data and be working on what Chatham has, what Concord has, you know, other
Right,
other
that's true.
elements of a comprehensive plan.
Yep. Okay. So let me try making a motion on the second part and then see if it works. So I move to accept the recommendation of the Traffic Committee to install and maintain 4-speed feedback signs in the following areas of Hingham as described below. Prior to the 1-year anniversary of this vote, the Traffic Committee shall review the operation of these traffic calming measures and provide a report to the Select Board as to their effectiveness, along with the Traffic Committee's recommendation as to whether these measures should be maintained as is or modified in any way. The Select Board shall review such report at a duly noticed public meeting and consider the recommendations of the Traffic Committee. So it's A, on a utility pole at 190 North Street, and B, on a new foundation abutting the frontage of, no, I'm sorry, we're going with A, which is on a utility pole at 190 North Street. And then, so we're not doing B.
We are.
We are doing B? Okay, I'm sorry. On a new foundation abutting the frontage, you're right, of 142 South Street.
That's right.
And then at the, for C, at the existing light pole abutting the frontage of 21 North Street. And then D, on a new foundation at the crosswalk abutting the frontage of 106 Main Street, provided for that location, the Select Board shall review this issue within 3 months of this vote.
Second.
Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you, everyone, for the feedback. All right, JR, can you just quickly walk us through Kilby Street? You might, do you have to unmute him, Art? Okay.
So, we had a request from a resident on Kilby Street to incorporate their neighborhood into the 25-mile-per-hour streets under Section 17C. This is an appropriate change, in part because the nature of Kilby Street has recently changed with the introduction of new traffic controls at the intersection of Kilby Street and Chief Justice Cushing Highway. So I would say the character of the street, while it used to be classified as a collector, is now certainly more local. And with that said, the residential stretch of this street really runs from the MBTA right-of-way to the Rockland Street State Highway layout.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Any
Yeah.
questions or concerns? Any questions or concerns from members of the public? Okay.
So if I can ask, how many miles are being added for this Kilby Street to the 25-mile-an-hour limit?
I believe Kilby Street in this section runs to plus or minus a half mile.
So we're adding about a half mile?
Yeah.
Okay, and on the Main Street, how much is being added?
I can get you a more exact amount, but I think that's closer to a quarter mile.
Okay, that was my sense as well. Okay, yeah, so these, in the grand scheme of things, are marginal increments.
Correct.
Yes, okay, I'm fine with it. No other questions.
Okay.
No questions.
Okay, I'm ready to take a motion.
I make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Traffic Committee and establish a speed limit of 25 miles per hour in the following areas of Hingham, as described below and on the attached maps titled Section 17C Streets. Figure 14 dated September 26, 2023. Figure 17C Streets figured Figure 15 dated September 26, 2023. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 17C, and Article 25 of the 2022 Town of Hingham Annual Town Meeting, Main Street from the property line boundary between 90 and 100 Main Street to the intersection with Water Street, Kilby Street from the Rockland Street State Highway layout to the MBTA right-of-way.
Second.
Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you. Thank you, JR. Thank you, Sergeant Kilroy.
Before we lose JR, Chair, if I could just ask, we have asked at prior meetings about having something at the intersection, the crosswalk right where the post office is downtown. Is there any progress in what might be proposed there?
As a first step, the police department and DPW are intending to block out 2 of the 15-minute parking spots that are currently available for brief parking. But by blocking those out, we will significantly improve the visibility of pedestrians attempting to cross the street to drivers that are approaching the crosswalk. And through that process, we would hope that that would be a first step in making that a safer crossing and a more comfortable crossing for pedestrians. Secondary efforts might include more physical changes to that location, which could include the rectangular rapid flash beacons. It might include curb bump outs and the raised speed type table might also be a possibility there.
So just so I'm clear, are you suggesting removing parking spots in downtown?
I am suggesting on a temporary basis, just blocking them off with sawhorses to see how things operate and to observe the effectiveness of that type of temporary traffic measure. As a permanent measure, if we were to make a more substantial change to that crosswalk, it might involve either adjusting the location of the crosswalk so that it would not impact parking, or it would minimize impact to parking. But most of the physical changes would require some change to parking.
I guess I'm concerned about removing parking from downtown Hingham. Unless we want to, kill the merchants, we need to look at solutions that address safety but do not sacrifice the very limited parking that's available now.
Yeah, so if I would add to that, so JR, very much appreciate you and Sergeant Kilroy talking about solutions to that issue. I would agree with Joe 100% that crosswalk is a major problem. I think I would just ask you before you take any action with respect to improving that crosswalk, just come back and have a conversation with us first. Maybe present it to traffic, get traffic's input, and then come to us. Because I think the three of us, as we've kind of had this discussion over the last 2 or 3 weeks here, we'd like some public input about how best to address that situation before we start removing parking spaces and or putting flashing lights there. That would just be my ask.
I'd agree.
Yes.
That'd be my pleasure.
Thank you very much. You're doing a great job, JR. You too, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you, JR. Thank you, Jeff.
You too. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, you ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the naming bylaw update. All right, who's going to kick us off here? Joe or Tom?
I think Tom is going
Tom?
to introduce us.
Sure. So we have asked, thank you, Liz. We've asked John Coughlin, Attorney John Coughlin, our town council, to join us tonight. John worked with myself and Joe over several sessions to come up with a draft policy for you and the public to consider. And John is, I think, prepared to give us a rundown as to how we got to what's before you tonight, and to get your feedback and for next steps.
Yeah, so
Can you share screen with the draft, or I don't know.
All right, Tom.
So as we're doing that, I just want to thank John for his work. This is not an easy solution, and we have made an effort to not to go down to the very, very micro level of managing every decision, but also not to leave it so vague that almost anything would work. So I think what we've come across is an appropriate middle ground, that it's more than a general policy. We get down to specifics, but not to such micro levels that it would become burdensome. So with that, John, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So just to kind of orient where we are and what the purpose of this policy is, if you recall, when town meeting passed the updated naming bylaw last spring at town meeting, there was a section of that bylaw that required the select board to adopt a written policy. And that's what this draft is. It's a 3-page policy to try to implement what town meeting requested. But we also have to remember that what town meeting asked us to draft a policy about was a very limited and narrow area. It really deals with those proposals to name or rename portions of buildings or portions of land being less than 25% of the whole, or some ancillary buildings on a parcel of land that has a main building. For example, if you have a school and then there's a small building in the back, that would be under this policy. But the naming or renaming of any building itself or any land itself is still a town meeting vote. So this policy really only deals with that narrow area. So what we tried to come up with was a couple of things. We do an introduction to say what the purpose of the policy is, and then we go into trying to define what a widely advertised public meeting is. And that's a concept that the committee that helped draft the bylaw came up with. They want to make sure that any decision to name or rename is done at a widely advertised public meeting, which is beyond just the typical 48 hours notice under the open meeting law. So we came up with certain categories of items that would have to be, steps that would have to be taken before you could hold a meeting. For example, the board would have to notify the select board first. Then you would include a copy of that on your agenda so the public was aware of this concept. You would also use town listservs, you would use local media. You could do all of those things to make sure that if we're going to name or rename a town asset, that it's done at a widely advertised public meeting. So that's the first section. The second section is how do you initiate a proposal to name or rename a portion of a building or a portion of land. And we came up with a concept that it could be initiated 3 different ways. Either the select board could initiate it, the board, committee, or department having care, custody, and management could initiate it, or a petition signed by at least 10 registered voters and filed with that board could initiate it. And we took that concept from the familiar concept where 10 registered voters can petition town meeting at any time. That's a familiar process, and we tried to implement that same process into this policy if someone wants to come forward with a naming or renaming proposal. Then the next section goes into how are these approved. There are actually 2 different types of proposals. There's a section 4 and a section 5. The section 4 is more naming or renaming a portion of a building like a room or a cafeteria or a gymnasium, or a portion of land, maybe just one baseball field on a larger parcel. And then section 5 is smaller projects like laying bricks for memorials or a bench or a tree or a flagpole or something like that. So the approval process is spelled out under this section. And we also added a provision that all of these approvals are done in accordance with the standard form agreement that town council will draft. And then we went into a process to remove a name in the event that in the future, if there's something that's named in the town and it's deemed inappropriate at some point in the future, there's a process for removing that name under both Section 4 and Section 5. Then we did a section for payments and donations so that if, for example, we sell the naming rights to a small building like a gym or a piece of land, less than 25%, those funds would either be restricted donations that would go into a gift fund, or they would be unrestricted going into the general fund. And that would depend on the intent of the donor. And there would also be a written donation agreement for all of those payments that would be drafted by town council. So then the next section below that is there is a process to appeal any decision. That's already in the bylaw. We just kind of flushed it out a little bit. We indicated that if the select board gets an appeal, they'll notify the board or committee or department from which the appeal was made. And we also added a provision that while that appeal is pending, that the decision is stayed and put on hold so that nothing happens until the select board has a final say on that. Two other provisions, we carved out an exception for seasonal advertisements. So for example, signs on fences in a baseball field or signs on a snack shack, those kind of seasonal, maybe for the summer, in order to raise funds, those are not considered a naming or renaming under the bylaw or under this policy. So the board can just make those decisions on their own. And then the last section just makes it clear that this policy is really only about these limited areas under the bylaw, that any determination to name or rename an entire building like a school or an entire piece of land like a conservation area, those are still all town meeting decisions under the bylaw, and they do not go through this process. So that would follow the normal process of a warrant article through the select board, through AgCom, and then ultimately to town meeting. So that's kind of an overview of the policy we came up with. People can take a look at it. We can make revisions. It can be changed in the future, but we need a policy in place just so we can start to implement this bylaw going forward. That's it.
So John, if I can just add, so in every case, the initial decision is made by the board or committee that has jurisdiction responsibility for that building or piece of land. So when you refer to the board, it's not this board. It is, in fact, the board or committee that has, whether it's the school committee or rec or whatever it is. Right. So it's that group that makes the initial decision, and then ultimately, if someone appeals, the appeal would come to this board.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, John, for walking us through this. And thank you, Joe and Tom, for all of your work on this. This was certainly one of our goals to get done as quickly as possible so we could put this into practice following town meeting. Certainly it's complicated, and I think our challenge is being flexible and agile enough to really encourage productive public-private partnerships while being strict enough that we're protecting the town. So it's a very fine line, but this is great, and I appreciate all of your efforts. Joe, do you want to make any further comment?
Well, so
I know you work closely on this.
The goal this evening is not to have this board vote.
Correct.
It's to make sure that the public is aware of what's being proposed, and then have it out there, and we should consider when we would want to revisit this issue so that we could then take it up for vote.
Yes, so right now we are not planning to meet next week, October 3rd. Our next meeting is planned for October 10th. So I would ask for feedback to be sent to the town administrator at hingham-ma.gov email address if members of the public have questions or comments or feedback. So there'll be a 2-week period for us to gather feedback. I'd like to have it on the agenda on the 10th, and we can discuss it. People are welcome to come. Obviously, it's always a public meeting, and we'll have a public comment period. And then at that point, we can decide if we have enough information and we've had enough time to vote, or delay it another week or two or whatever we need. Certainly it's a priority for us, but it's kind of a self-imposed deadline. So we certainly want to get it right. And want the public to have time to weigh in on this.
And to that end too, Liz, we'll post this draft policy on the website tomorrow morning.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Bill, do you have questions or comments?
Yeah, just one thing, John, if you could walk me through one portion of this. So duly elected boards have power granted to them under Mass General Law. Whatever's under their care, custody, and control gives them legal authority over that land, building, whatever. The way this is written is an appointed board. So because some boards appointed by the select board who are, under us would have some legal authority over lands or buildings. Is this saying that they can name something and it stays that way unless it's appealed to the select board?
That's the way the town meeting bylaw was passed, Bill. So, but you'd have to show that board had care, custody, and control of the real estate. And that would be something that board would have to show.
Well, I thought the town meeting vote was subject to regulations that would be adopted or put in place by the select board. My understanding of the vote was the committee said, we're allowing a lot of the policy to be left to you to implement a lot of this. But I mean, a good example, let's say the Conservation Commission has quite a bit of land under their authority. And now I don't know if a non-elected board would have legal care, custody, control of that land like, an elected board would, like a school committee would. But an appointed board now is going to have the ability just to name that land, and that would remain in perpetuity unless there was an appeal?
So two things. One is the section 4 of the bylaw that was passed at town meeting, not this policy, but the bylaw, that specifically gave the decision about naming and renaming to the board that has care, custody, and control of that real estate. So that was the town meeting vote. What this policy was to implement any additional procedures on top of that, but it didn't change the fundamental decision as to who makes that decision. But remember, we're only talking about areas that are less than 25% of the whole. So you wouldn't be talking about naming an entire piece of land. You may have like a grove or a little garden, or you may have a room in a building, or this is only for those areas that are below the 25% threshold. If you're over the 25% threshold, that's a town meeting vote. That has nothing to do with the board that has care, custody, and control or anything else. So you got to narrow it down to just that area is really what we're talking about.
Do we need to flesh out more the appellate process? Or just say any appeal? So any can a non-resident file an appeal? Do you have to be a voter to file an appeal? Or do we just say any appeal?
So you have to read this policy in conjunction with the bylaw. So the bylaw of section 4D, the town meeting has already set the appeal process, and that says that any town resident can appeal. All this does is add additional procedures on top of that, so that if the select board gets an appeal from a town resident under the bylaw, you would then notify the underlying board that you got the appeal, so they were aware of it. And it also puts their decision on hold until you vote. But the decision about appealing was already passed in the bylaw by town meeting. So this policy is just adding things on top. It's not changing the bylaw. Yeah.
And just let's flesh out the appellate process more. So let's hypothetically say a committee makes a recommendation on naming a portion of land or a building under the 25% of the whole as passed by town meeting. And a resident doesn't like that idea and appeals to us. Then does the decision become ours in terms of keeping the name, changing the name, remanding it to that board to take further action? Like, how does that work?
Right, so you, under the bylaw, you have the ability to approve or reject that action. So if you approve it, it's upheld. If you reject it, you can do that in any way you wish. You could reject it and remand it back to them. You can reject it and say, we're done. You can do it any way you want, but you would have to either approve or reject.
Okay, all right. I obviously appreciate the work you.
I don't think you could override it. Like, I don't think you could take the appeal and change it to something else.
But that's what I was wondering. Like, because they say, you know, we think a better name would be this or that. But yeah, I'm just trying to see how this might. I'm just trying to see how this might.
The select board has the ability to initiate one of these. So if you got an appeal and you rejected it because you didn't like it and you had a better idea, you could submit your idea to the board and start the process all over again.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank, you know, Tom, you, John, you, Tom, and Joe. I know you spent quite a bit of work on this. I got this last night, so I didn't get a chance to really fully digest it, but appreciate the overview, John. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And when you read it, Bill, you really have to read the bylaw in conjunction with the policy, because the bylaw sets the town meeting has already established the procedure. This just fills in some additional items on top of it and fills in the blanks, but the fundamental procedures have already been adopted by town meetings. And that was approved by the attorney. That bylaw has been approved by the Attorney General back in August, so it's now on the books.
Sure.
And so going to the seasonal advertisements section there. So I guess if the Recreation Commission, for example, who has clear custody control of Haley Field or Hersey Field, if they wanted to put signs on the outfield wall like other towns do, I guess other than, you know, conforming with the zoning bylaw on signs, the length of those signs would be put up, the cost of those signs would all be decided by that commission, correct?
Yes, and I think that's the way it happens now.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I just had a couple comments, and I know you were trying not to be too specific, but under widely advertising public meeting, you know, should we, and we don't have to decide this, but just something to think about, I guess, should we say, you know, what listservs, what local media, where exactly are we distributing the notices, just to give the other boards and committees more guidance?
My only comment on that, Liz, is we can do as you want us to. The more specific you get with naming types of things like that, is you end up having to remake the policy on a regular basis, because as we know, things come and go. Twitter is no longer; it's now X. You got Facebook is less popular than it used to be. Things change all the time, and you end up having to change your policy when that happens.
Yes, understood.
Just to follow up on that, we might want to consider having it that it'll go on such policies or on such boards as included on the town administrator's recommended list. So you could then update your list periodically, but then all the boards would have to focus on the lists that you have provided. You know, that you'll provide. You know, you'll post where you think it should be.
Yeah.
So Liz, I think that's a good idea to be a little more specific there.
Yeah.
And that recommended list is something we can maintain. And then related to Bill's comment about if they had to be Hingham residents, under naming or renaming the proposal, and number 3, the petition, obviously it's 10 registered voters in Hingham, correct? And maybe that's specified in the bylaw.
Good catch, Liz.
Just not anybody. And then one thing that I realize is very difficult, but I don't think this accomplishes, is any sense of consistency. So that's just something I've been thinking about. You know, do we want to have more structure so that there's consistency in the signage, or how the bricks are done, or, you know, what the dollar amount is for a room in one building versus a room in the other building, and you know, how important that is.
I mean, I think that those are important considerations. I think it's difficult to opine at the beginning how to do that, and I think we may wind up as we move forward, addressing those issues.
Okay.
I will note, and just really picking up on something that Bill said and following up on what you just said, if there's an appeal, it's not limited to the name. So if something is named and it's for $1, that can be, the dollar amount can be the subject of the appeal.
Okay.
It's not just the name. So that may bring us towards that consistency, Liz, that you're thinking about.
Okay. Yes,
Because
because
it is the naming decision, which includes not only the name, but how, if it's being funded and what the conditions are. So it's that decision in its entirety that is the subject of the appeal.
okay. Okay. So
And the physical characteristics of the sign itself, Joe, are subject to the appeal because they have to, you have to have a design of what's being approved. So the whole thing is subject to appeal.
okay.
Yes.
And so are you envisioning during that appeal process is where things like financial benefit, whether it's aligned with our history, tradition, culture, values, those things will be defined?
Hopefully, those will be defined in the initial decision of the board. But if it turns out that they're not, then this board would have to do that.
Okay. And then under removal, where you have any name capitalized, that's a person or corporate entity, correct?
Yeah, so there's a definition in the bylaw of a name. It's a word or phrase that deals with individuals, entities, locations, or events. So it can really be anything. And this policy adopts the same definition so that they're consistent across the boards.
Okay, great. As far as the appeal and that whole process and the decision staying until a final decision, should we set some sort of timeline there or,
We can. I think that's a policy decision. I think we talked about that a little, Joe, but I don't want to tie the select board's hands, but at the same time,
you don't want it to go on forever?
I mean, I just think, again, this merits further discussion, but there may be some issues that we can resolve in a week and others may take 4 months.
Sure.
So, and it'll be up to this board to act. And it may be that if, in order to move things along, we might establish our own policy that we'll act within, 2 weeks or 2 months, whatever. But at this stage, I think it's difficult to set that timing.
Okay. And as far as seasonal, redefining that as really anything that's not permanent. So it could be the school year or the baseball season or spring.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Something that's sort of temporary in nature?
I don't want to, I'm trying to find that fine line of defining things, but not being too narrow. I don't want to say seasonal is 4 months. It just depends on the circumstance. So I think it's clearly intended to be something not permanent that's up for, definitely less than a year for it to be seasonal, right? So I think it's really intended to get to those ads on the fences for a ballpark, maybe something on a snack shack, something on a scoreboard, but not something that's permanent. That's the intent of that section.
And it's not going to be a situation where someone takes it down for 12 hours and therefore it's not covered. We'll make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Those were just some initial thoughts. Certainly, I want to spend more time with this and look forward to the public's feedback as well.
Can I ask one last question?
Sure.
John, Joe's question kind of triggered another question in my mind, and kind of getting back to one of my initial points. If an elected board has legally defined care, custody, control over an entity, being a field or a building, how now do we have the ability to overturn that decision or review that decision on appeal? Is it because town meeting said we can do it? Yeah, town meeting's the ultimate authority. Yeah.
Only because town meeting said.
Only because town meeting.
So for example,
so we could do it.
Let's use the school committee for an example. The statute that gives the school committee care, custody, and control of the school grounds says except otherwise is provided by town meeting. So it's only because town meeting gave you that authority is why this works.
Do you want me to bring up the bylaw?
No, that's fine. That was a quick question I had based on Joe's question. But I'm good. Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
And Bill, just to follow up, so the Conservation Commission, which is an appointed commission, they do have care, custody, and control of certain property.
Sure.
So it's
Yeah.
not limited to elected boards.
I agree.
Right, yep.
Yeah, a lot of appointed boards definitely do.
Yep.
But remember, if the Concom wants to, under this policy, we'd be talking about naming less than 25% of the land.
Right.
So you'd really be talking about a little, a piece of a larger parcel. If they want to name an entire field or an entire conservation area, they have to go to town meeting to do that.
Yeah. And that's
only
right. And this board, as the appointing authority, we, as in the appeal process, we have the authority to overview, to see what decision they've reached and to, if we can initiate an appeal if we don't like it.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Other comments or questions? I'm sure there will be more to come. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Okay. Well, I look forward to continuing to discuss this, and please do send your feedback to the town administrator emails. That's the best way for us to catalog it all. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, John. Thank you, Tom.
Good work.
Yeah, excellent. It's good progress. All right. Next, did you have a comment? No. Okay. Next on the agenda are appointments. I don't believe we have any this evening. Okay. Next is public comment. Any members of the public that would like to make a comment on something we haven't yet discussed? Okay, seeing none. Next is town administrator and select board reports. Art?
Yes, thank you. I have 3 this evening. First, I just want to provide a West Nile update. You may recall on the 12th of September, us reporting out that the State Department of Public Health had determined or assigned a risk level of low to Hingham based on a positive test of one mosquito a few days prior. Today we learned that the Department of Public Health has raised that risk level to moderate. We believe that's because there have been additional positive mosquito tests in other communities, but there has not been one in Hingham since the 7th of September. With that in mind, I just want to share some of the Department of Public Health's guidance with regard to West Nile. To prevent West Nile infection, the following actions are recommended. First, be prepared, know your risk, check the Department of Public Health page regularly, repair screens, clean up to get rid of mosquito breeding sites, be aware of stagnant water on private property, such as unused swimming pools, and consult the local Board of Health. Number 2, wear long sleeves and long pants from dusk to dawn when weather permits. Number 3, use mosquito netting on baby carriages and playpens. Number 4, wear mosquito repellent when outdoors, especially between dusk and dawn. And 5, dump standing water twice weekly. I have 2 others. Earlier today, we had the pleasure of hosting another American Red Cross blood drive. We had 36 appointments scheduled and several walk-ons during the day. So while I don't have an actual count of units collected, I think it was a very successful drive. And the Red Cross team expressed a lot of thanks and appreciation for our senior center, our elder services team, who accommodated them in their recreation room. And finally, just as a reminder, tomorrow night, our Commission on Disability or Disabilities will be hosting a hearing on our ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. The purpose, again, is just to provide the public another opportunity to provide input or just ask questions about our assessment of buildings, facilities, and programs with the intent of ensuring the town is complying with Title II of the American with Disabilities Act. That hearing is from 7 to 8:30 p.m. by Zoom, and details, including the Zoom link, can be found on our self-assessment webpage, which is hingham-ma.gov/ADA.
Excellent. Thank you. Michelle?
Nothing for me this evening.
Okay. Tom?
Just very quickly, I just want to let the community know a couple of thoughts I've been having. So for anybody who doesn't know, I've been out. I missed last week's meeting. I'm not there tonight. I'm home with COVID. I'm getting over it. Thank you. Everybody's well wishes. I feel much better. I'll be back soon. But I'm telling you this because I want to express my extreme thankfulness and I believe our towns express the degree to which this town is lucky to have two ATAs like Michelle and Art, who are capable of running this place in my absence and have my full support and thanks and gratitude for everything that you guys do. Art and Michelle, great job, and thank you for everything.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. And we're glad you're feeling better. Bill?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Joe?
Nothing tonight. Tom, keep your distance until
Yeah.
you're all set.
Not rush back.
No rush. I don't have anything either. So if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. We are adjourned at 8:16 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.